G'day, g'day. It's Nick here and welcome to Wicked Wildlife. And in this episode, me and Boo want to share with you 10 facts that we think you might not know about wombats. So stick around, guys. Here's 10 things you didn't know about wombats. Pretty dangerous. For more Wicked Wildlife encounters, this is Tully, our resident scrub dog, newest member to our wild family. Here's Bar here in South Australia. Have a look. We've got 2 different other snakes with us today. I hope you have a great one and take care. So, wombat fact number 1 is that wombats have square poo. Now, this might not be new to some of you guys who have been watching our channel for a little while, because the first video that Boo ever did with us, back when she was, the size of a small football, was why do wombats have square poo? So for a detailed answer, check that video out and you'll get to see Boo as a cute little baby. But a long story short is wombats basically use their droppings as a territorial marker, as do a lot of animals. The difference with a wombat is, because these guys live underground, if you're going to dig a burrow, that dirt's got to go somewhere. And more often than not, wombat burrows end up with this big sort of mountain of dirt outside the front door. And a round dropping basically rolls downhill. It's not going to stay on this little mountain of dirt. So by having a square dropping means that this dropping stays exactly where the wombat leaves it. It's why wombats are really famous for leaving their droppings on top of rocks and logs and all sorts of things. They like pooping up high where all the other wombats walking along are going to see it, and by having a square dropping means it's not going to roll away. So that's number 1. Wombats have square poo. Wombat fact number 2. There's actually 3 species of wombats. Boo here is what a lot of people call a common wombat. Now personally, I prefer the name forest wombat or bare-nosed wombat because while these guys are almost certainly the most abundant of the 3 species, in some areas in their former range, they're actually completely extinct. So we can't say they're very common in those areas. Forest wombat describes the habitat they live in, and the name bare-nosed wombat separates them from the other 2 species, and that would be the southern hairy-nosed wombat, who lives across the Nullarbor Plain in South Australia into Western Australia, and the northern hairy-nosed wombat, who used to be found through inland New South Wales up into south and central Queensland. Whereas the common wombat or forest wombat is found along the east coast, throughout Victoria and in Tasmania as well. Wombat fact number 3 is that out of these 3 species, one of them, the northern hairy-nosed wombat, is actually critically endangered. Today they only number about 250, which, to put them in terms of endangered species, there's about 1,800 giant pandas out there, and you can imagine the hundreds of millions of dollars that go into panda research. Only 250 northern hairy-nosed wombats, and the sad reality is most Australians, let alone people overseas, don't even know they exist. That's not to say it's too much better for the others. The common or forest wombat, like I said before, has had a dramatic reduction in their former range. Western Victoria, where I live, these guys used to be found, and today they only live in some very small pockets in the area. The southern hairy-nosed wombat, on the same token, is abundant in some areas, but is completely absent from other parts of their former range. And that northern hairy-nosed wombat used to be found over the vast majority of New South Wales and a fair chunk of Queensland, and today only lives in 2 small national parks that are fenced off for their own protection. So there you go. There's some really endangered wombats. Wombat fact number 4. Wombats have backwards facing pouches. As all marsupials do, wombats give birth to really premature young, like a tiny little jelly bean, just like kangaroos and koalas. But unlike a lot of other marsupials, wombats have a pouch that faces backwards rather than straight up like a kangaroo. And the reason for this is twofold. Obviously, when you dig for a living, if your pouch face forwards, all it's going to do is fill up with dirt. The other problem that a forwards facing pouch would present is, as you can see with Boo here, her profile's pretty low to the ground. Her short stubby legs mean that if a baby was sticking her head out of the pouch facing forwards, every time mum crawls over a rock or a log or a bush, poor baby wombat's going to get hit in the head. So there you go. Wombats have pouches that face backwards. Really good for a subterranean lifestyle, but it means when a baby wombat wakes up, their first view is mum's bum. Wombat fact number 5. The wombat's closest living relative today is actually the koala. They both fit into what's left of the suborder that we call Vombatidae, which essentially means things that look like wombats. Now, there used to be a lot more species than just these 3 wombats and the koala in there. There used to be a couple other wombats, there used to be a couple other koalas thousands and thousands of years ago. But there used to be some really exciting and interesting things as well. we had what we call Diprotodon, which is essentially a wombat the size of a hippopotamus. There was also what they called Thylacoleo carnifex, which we commonly call the marsupial lion, an animal that grew to 138 kilos and had the most powerful bite force pound for pound of any mammal on earth. Essentially a hybrid between a wombat and a koala that used to eat anything that would walk underneath the trees that it lived in. So wombats and koalas are not only cousins, they fit into a really unique and interesting family, the Vombatidae. Wombat fact number 6. Wombat burrows are actually really important shelter for all kinds of other species. Now, we've known this for a little while, but the real evidence came through in a study in 2015, where some scientists basically put camera traps in front of a bunch of different wombat burrows on an island off of South Australia. And what they were observing is how many other animals used burrows dug by the southern hairy-nosed wombat. Now, over this time of the study, what they found was they got photographs of 11 different species besides wombats using these burrows. Everything from peninsula dragons to sand skinks to fairy penguins to burrowing bettongs, even endangered rock wallabies. In fact, they actually got more footage of rock wallabies utilising wombat burrows than they did of wombats. And part of the reason for this is a wombat will dig up to 12 burrows in their habitat. Now, they can only sleep in one at a time. And this is one reason why a lot of farmers and people don't necessarily like them. It seems wasteful and overly destructive. Now, they dig these burrows so that wherever they are in their habitat, there is safety nearby. But it means that all these unoccupied burrows are actually really important shelter for other animals. Now, theoretically, this shelter is one of the major things that could have helped so many Australian species survive the vicious fire cycles that we have here in Australia. And because we've lost wombats over so much of their former range in all 3 species, it would be really interesting to find out if the demise of wombats correlated to the demise of these other small terrestrial animals that suddenly lost the ability to hide from bushfires and predators and other things. So there you go. Wombats are ecosystem engineers. They build houses for other animals. Wombat fact number 7 is that wombats are actually really, really fast. Like surprisingly fast. A lot of people really don't believe me when I say this, because when you look at her, she's not exactly built for sprinting, is she? She's got legs the size of a toilet roll, and she can grow to be 40 kilos. But wombats can actually reach speeds of 40 kilometers an hour, which is something like 27 miles per hour. Now, when we say this is fast, this isn't fast just compared to the average human being. It actually works out to be at about 11 meters per second. Now, if you compare the world's fastest human being, Usain Bolt, he runs at 12.7 meters per second. So, regular human being, Usain Bolt, wombat. These guys are really quick. But just like Usain Bolt, they're built for a short distance run. As we said in our last wombat fact, these guys dig lots of burrows. And the reason they're so fast is that if she encounters a dingo or something out in the wild, she can run as quick as she can to the nearest burrow. Once she gets there, she's at safety. So that's what they've evolved to do, run really fast for a really short distance. So wombat fact number 8 is that wombats have really tough bums. Armoured bums, in fact. If you look at a wombat really close up, their bum is really flat, like a bulldozer blade, so they can use it for pushing dirt out. But what it's really important for is it's a defensive mechanism. Following on from our last wombat fact, that these guys run really quick and that they dig so many burrows, once she gets back to the closest burrow, she can slam on the brakes, stick that bum up and basically use it as a front door. It seals off the burrow. Now, being so flat, there's not really anything to gain purchase on. You can't pull her out just by grabbing on this plate. There's nothing to grab a hold of. It's so tough that that animal can bite and scratch and the wombat can grit and just bear it. So it works really well. If that animal is really determined and it doesn't give up and it really wants to get the wombat out, the wombat can actually lie down a little bit and let that animal start to crawl over its back and stand up really hard and crush other animals that get into their burrows. Now, the animal kingdom is full of some pretty amazing defensive mechanisms, but as far as I can find, the wombat is the only thing that squashes things with their bums. It's pretty cool. Wombat fact number 9 is that wombats can live a really long time. Now, they're not going to be up there with crocodiles and human beings and whales, but as far as marsupials goes, these guys have some of the longest lifespans that we know of. In the wild, somewhere between 8, 10, 12 years is probably as far as they're going to be going. They've got a stressful life. In captivity, they regularly reach 15 to 20 years and plus. And I was actually lucky enough to get to work with the world's oldest wombat, Patrick, at Ballarat Wildlife Park, who recently passed away just 4 months shy of his 33rd birthday. So wombats can live a long time. To put this into perspective, this is actually 10 years longer than not only the world's oldest koala, who passed away at Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary at 23 years old, it's also 10 years older than the longest record for a kangaroo. So she's beating all these other marsupials by a fair way. They've got to be doing something right. Wombat fact number 10 is that wombats are surprisingly smart. Now, in the scheme of the mammalian family, all the mammals, marsupials aren't known to be the most intelligent, but wombats are really clever. When you compare them to their closest cousin, the koala, who pound for pound has the smallest brain of any mammal on the record, the wombat has the largest brain, pound for pound, of any marsupial that we've got. So these guys are really clever, especially when you compare it to their closest cousin. Now, the reason for this difference between wombats and koalas as far as intelligence goes is it's all about their lifestyles. Koalas live off gum leaves, and it doesn't require a great deal of intelligence to hunt down gum leaves. They also have far less predators, just due to where they live and how they live their lives, than a wombat does. Wombats, on the other hand, for survival, rely on being able to find the nearest burrow really quickly, a split-second decision. So as she's walking around the bush, living out her night, she's got to be aware of where she is, where the nearest burrow is, and what the most direct route is. Because a dingo runs really quick. She might be fast, but it's no one-man race. So wombats have to be clever. Now, if you don't believe this, speak to any wildlife carer who's dealt with wombats. One of the general rules of thumb that we sort of use to gauge intelligence in one species over another is play. And wombats have a remarkable ability or love of play. Compared to other marsupials, wombats are always doing something. They're really clever, really cool animals. And as far as it goes, they've got everything. Brains and brawn, the lot. So there it is, guys. 10 quirky facts about wombats that me and Boo think you didn't know. But leave a comment down below and let us know how many of those you actually knew and how many of them might have been new to you. Other than that, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or like us on Facebook. And there's plenty of ways you can support us and help our videos come out more regularly. You can check us out on patreon.com/Wicked Wildlife, or you can head on over to wickedwildlife.com, purchase an awesome Wicked Wildlife shirt, and all that help goes towards bringing our videos out more and more regularly. Anyway, guys, that's it for now. As always, be nice to wildlife. Have a good one and take care.